You can lie to others about what you feel, but you cannot lie to your own soul. Every emotion you deny remains alive within you, waiting for the moment when silence cracks. You can hide anger behind calmness, sadness behind productivity, fear behind strength. But these disguises do not erase what's underneath. They only delay its return. Carl Jung warned that what we repress does not disappear. It reorganizes itself. Every unacknowledged emotion becomes energy trapped in the body, shaping your reactions, your habits, your choices. The feelings you refuse to feel begin to live your life for you. We are raised to believe that control means suppression, that emotional composure is a sign of maturity. But what we call self-control often means self-abandonment. We confuse repression with strength and numbness with peace. We are taught that to feel deeply is to be weak, so we armor our hearts and call it wisdom. And yet beneath that armor, something is trembling. You can feel it when you wake up anxious for no reason. You can sense it in the way certain moments make your chest tighten or your stomach ache. That is the rebellion, the soul refusing to stay silent. Jung understood emotion as the voice of the unconscious. To ignore it is to ignore the psyche itself. The ego wants order, but the unconscious wants truth. And when truth is ignored, it finds its way out. Through the body, through relationships, through sudden outbursts we can't explain. The emotion you refuse to feel becomes the pattern you repeat. You avoid confrontation and resentment grows in silence. You suppress grief and your joy loses depth. You hide anger and it returns as exhaustion. The more you control, the less free you become. This is the quiet tragedy of repression. It makes you a stranger to yourself. You may appear calm, but inside a storm is gathering. You smile while 1,000 unshed tears press against the back of your eyes. You speak softly while your unspoken rage hums like an engine beneath your words. You live half alive, half awake, a performer of stability. But emotions do not vanish simply because they are denied. They store themselves like memories in your nervous system, waiting for acknowledgement. And when life presses too hard, when loss, love, or stress cracks your surface, everything you buried begins to rise. The body shakes, the voice breaks, the mask fractures, and what feels like collapse is often the soul finally telling the truth. You can only pretend for so long. Eventually, what is false must fall away, because everything you pretend not to feel, your grief, your rage, your envy, your longing, isn't gone. It's waiting. It's watching, and it will not rest until you stop pretending and start listening. We were raised to worship control. From an early age, we were told to be strong. Don't cry, calm down, move on. The message was clear: feeling is dangerous, and self-control is salvation. Society taught us that maturity means keeping emotions out of sight, that composure is the highest virtue, and so we learned to bury what was alive in us and call it discipline. But what we call control is often fear in disguise. Fear of exposure, fear of rejection, fear of being overwhelmed by our own humanity. We build emotional walls not to protect ourselves from others, but to protect others from seeing what we truly feel. Carl Jung saw this as a modern sickness, the ego's obsession with mastery. The more we try to dominate the inner world, the more we separate ourselves from it. The ego becomes a tyrant, ruling through suppression, and the soul retreats into exile. What we end up with is not strength, but paralysis. A life so carefully managed that it no longer feels alive. We tell ourselves, "I'm fine," and mistake numbness for stability. We rationalize every ache, analyze every wound, label every feeling as irrational. We treat emotion like a malfunction, something to fix, medicate, or outthink. But the psyche doesn't obey logic. It speaks in feeling. When you suppress feeling, you silence the only language your soul knows. The myth of control is seductive because it offers the illusion of safety. If you can stay calm, you won't get hurt. If you can stay detached, no one can reach the parts of you that still bleed. If you can stay composed, maybe you can convince yourself that nothing is wrong. But this safety is an illusion, and a costly one, because the energy it takes to suppress emotion is the energy meant for living. Every ounce of effort you spend holding yourself together is energy stolen from your capacity to love, to create, to connect. Repression doesn't make emotion disappear. It traps it inside the nervous system. The anger you swallow tightens your jaw. The grief you hide weighs down your chest. The joy you deny turns into fatigue. The more you control, the more your body begins to speak for what you refuse to feel. Jung once wrote that emotion is the chief source of consciousness. To cut yourself off from emotion is to cut yourself off from the very current that gives life meaning. Control in this sense is not mastery, but it's amnesia. You forget what it feels like to be alive. This is why so many people who appear calm on the surface are quietly collapsing inside. The price of control is connection, with yourself, with others, with the sacred chaos that makes you human. The truth is, control does not protect you from pain. It only protects you from transformation. And transformation is the only thing that can set you free. When you stop trying to control your feelings, something radical happens. They stop controlling you. Because freedom isn't found in keeping everything contained. It's found in finally letting yourself feel. Every emotion you refuse to feel becomes part of your shadow. The shadow is not only the dark thoughts you try to hide. It is the grief you never grieved, the anger you never expressed, the love you never allowed yourself to need. It is everything that once moved through you, but was stopped halfway and forced underground. Carl Jung described the shadow as the person you would rather not be. But what he meant was deeper. The shadow is the self you abandoned to survive. Every time you swallowed your truth to be accepted, every time you silenced your pain to stay in control, you added another layer to it. Repression is not disappearance. It's storage. The emotions don't vanish, they go somewhere. They sink into the unconscious, into the dark architecture of the psyche, where they continue to live and act. The shadow is not passive. It doesn't just wait. It watches, listens, plots its return. It slips into your habits, your tone of voice, your sudden moods. It chooses your partners, your addictions, your fears. It knows how to find you when you least expect it. In your dreams, in your envy, in the way you criticize others for the very things you refuse to acknowledge in yourself. The more you repress, the larger your shadow becomes. Not because darkness is growing, but because your awareness is shrinking. You can only call something dark when you refuse to look at it. You can see this shadow in moments of overreaction, when something small provokes something huge. Someone interrupts you and rage erupts out of nowhere. A simple rejection feels catastrophic. These are not random explosions. They are messages from the parts of you that have been silenced too long. The shadow doesn't want to harm you. It wants to be integrated. But when ignored, it becomes disruptive, desperate to be seen. It will sabotage your peace to remind you of its existence. Jung said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." Most people spend their lives blaming fate, unaware that it's simply their shadow running the show. You think you're choosing partners freely, but you're reenacting your childhood wounds. You think you're avoiding conflict, but you're feeding resentment. You think you're in control, but your emotions, the ones you pretend not to have, are in control of you. This is how repression becomes possession. The energy you suppress doesn't die. It turns into influence. It whispers through your instincts, manipulates your thoughts, distorts your perception of others. And because it operates in the dark, you mistake its voice for your own. But repression has a strange mercy. It keeps what you can yet handle safe until you are ready to face it. The shadow is not your enemy. It is your unfinished self. The moment you stop running from it, it begins to change shape. What once looked monstrous begins to look familiar. The pain reveals a story. The anger reveals a wound. The shame reveals love that was never given space to breathe. And slowly you begin to see. The shadow was never against you. It was the part of you waiting to be welcomed home. Nothing you repress stays buried forever. What you push down eventually pushes back. The energy of unfelt emotion has a will of its own. It does not disappear. It rearranges. It waits for moments of weakness, cracks in your composure, small triggers that open the door, and then it rushes out, not as the original feeling, but as distortion. Carl Jung called this the return of the repressed. It's the psychological law that what is denied in the unconscious returns to the surface in disguised, often destructive forms. You don't get rid of emotion. You turn it into shadow behavior, and it begins to live your life for you. You deny anger, and it comes back as bitterness, sarcasm, passive aggression, cynicism. You suppress sadness, and it returns as emotional numbness, apathy, burnout. You hide your fear, and it manifests as control, perfectionism, overthinking, anxiety. You repress desire, and it turns into addiction, to work, to attention, to anything that can momentarily fill the silence. The emotion doesn't disappear. It changes costume. And the more you deny it, the more creative it becomes in finding its way back to you. You can feel this return in the way small things unsettle you. Why does one careless word pierce you so deeply? Why does one person's success make you feel invisible? Why does stillness make you anxious? Because these moments scratch the surface of what you've spent years avoiding. The repressed never returns politely. It comes as symptoms, the body speaking what the soul cannot. It comes as anxiety that seems to have no cause, as exhaustion that no rest can heal. It comes as a pattern, repeating relationships, recurring disappointments, the same pain in different faces. Jung said, neurosis is always a substitute for legitimate suffering. In other words, what you refuse to feel consciously, you will suffer unconsciously. The pain doesn't vanish. It just changes form. From emotion into compulsion, from honesty into sabotage. Look closely at your life and you will see where your repression lives. The argument you keep having with yourself. The apology you never received but can't stop rehearsing. The self-doubt that whispers even in moments of success. These are not coincidences. They are echoes of what has been buried. The tragedy is that most people try to fix these symptoms without ever addressing their source. They treat anxiety with distraction, burnout with productivity, emptiness with achievement. But the cure is not more control. It is contact. You have to touch what hurts. You have to feel what you've avoided. Because the emotion you refuse to meet will keep finding new ways to meet you. This is why breakdowns often precede breakthroughs. The psyche, tired of repression, forces you to face what you've been denying. What feels like the end of stability is often the beginning of honesty. The return of the repressed is not your punishment, it's your initiation. It's life refusing to let you live half alive. Everything you pretend not to feel is coming back to free you, but only if you are brave enough to feel it. Emotions are not accidents. They are messages. Each one carries information from the depths of your psyche, trying to guide you back toward balance. But because we've been trained to see feeling as weakness, we miss the wisdom that lives inside it. We spend our lives reacting to emotion instead of listening to it. Carl Jung saw emotions as the language of the unconscious, the bridge between what you know and what you have not yet realized. He believed that every feeling has a purpose, that every emotional wave carries meaning, even when it hurts. Feeling, he wrote, is not opposed to reason. It is reason's equal partner in the guidance of the soul. Anger, for example, is not just rage. It is the psyche's alarm signaling that a boundary has been crossed. Sadness is not just sorrow. It's a request for release, a way for the soul to cleanse what has been lost. Fear is not weakness. It is the body's intuition whispering, pay attention. And even shame, the heaviest of them all, hides a sacred truth. It reveals where love was replaced with judgment. When you begin to see emotion not as something to conquer, but as something to converse with, everything changes. The chaos of feeling starts to form patterns. The confusion begins to speak. The very thing you feared becomes your teacher. This is the intelligence of feeling, the way the unconscious communicates through sensation, through heat in the chest, through the tightening of the throat, through tears that come without permission. The psyche speaks in the body because that's where truth still lives. You don't have to analyze your feelings to understand them. You have to feel them to decode them. Every emotion is trying to move, to complete a story that was interrupted. When you suppress that movement, you trap yourself in the unfinished past. But when you let it flow, when you cry, scream, shake, breathe, the energy reorganizes itself. The story finds closure. Our culture teaches us to think our way out of pain. But feeling is not a problem to solve. It is a process to complete. Logic can describe your wounds, but only emotion can heal them. Jung once said that the soul suffers when it is denied emotion. To deny emotion is to deny the soul itself. Feeling then is not a flaw. It is fidelity to your own life. It's how you remain connected to what is real. When you begin to honor emotion, you start to see that every feeling has an intelligence far older than thought. It doesn't need to be justified. It only needs to be witnessed. The next time anger rises, don't push it away. Ask it, what are you protecting? When sadness arrives, don't rush to escape it. Ask, what are you mourning? When fear appears, don't shame it. Ask, what are you trying to warn me about? Each question opens a door, and behind that door is not chaos, it's coherence. Because the truth is, emotions are not there to control you. They're there to connect you. They are not interruptions to your life. They are your life speaking to you, asking to be heard. There comes a moment when understanding is no longer enough. You can read every book, repeat every affirmation, analyze every wound, but nothing changes until you allow yourself to feel. Feeling is not weakness, it is participation. It is how the soul re-enters the body after years of exile. But to feel again, you must first face what you have been avoiding. You must walk straight into the storm you've spent your whole life outrunning. Carl Jung said, "One does not become conscious by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." The darkness he spoke of is not out there. It's the emotional underworld within you, where everything unspoken waits. To feel is to descend, and descent always begins with fear. You'll feel it when you finally stop distracting yourself. The silence that follows will feel unbearable at first. The tears will come without permission. Your body may tremble, your chest tighten, your breath grow shallow. This is not regression. It's release. It's the psyche unclenching after years of holding itself together. You are not falling apart. You are finally falling in. Most people never reach this point because they believe that feeling will destroy them. But what truly destroys you is not feeling at all. Repression is corrosion. Slow, invisible, relentless. Emotion, when felt, burns clean. To feel is to allow the fire to pass through you instead of living in its smoke. This is why Jung saw emotional breakdowns not as pathology, but as initiation. The psyche's demand for honesty. When the old defenses crumble, the raw material of transformation becomes visible. The heart breaks open, and in that breaking, something greater begins to move through you. You start to notice that emotions, when welcomed, change quickly. Anger turns to clarity. Grief turns to tenderness. Fear turns to presence. The emotion is not the problem. Your resistance to it is. Feeling takes courage because it dismantles identity. It reveals the parts of you that the world never taught you to love. To feel your grief is to meet your depth. To feel your anger is to reclaim your power. To feel your fear is to rediscover your trust. This courage is not dramatic. It is quiet. It happens in small moments. When you stop numbing, when you cry without hiding, when you tell the truth even though your voice shakes. Every time you do, you reclaim a piece of yourself that repression stole. You begin to realize that feeling is not drowning. It is swimming in the ocean of your own being. You were never meant to stand on the shore. Real courage is not the absence of pain. It's the willingness to walk through it with open eyes. When you finally let yourself feel, you discover what all the avoidance was hiding. That inside the very emotions you feared lives the pulse of your aliveness. To feel deeply is to be fully human. And to be fully human is the beginning of liberation. There comes a moment when understanding is no longer enough. You can read every book, repeat every affirmation, analyze every wound, but nothing changes until you allow yourself to feel. Feeling is not weakness, it is participation. It is how the soul re-enters the body after years of exile. But to feel again, you must first face what you have been avoiding. You must walk straight into the storm you've spent your whole life outrunning. Carl Jung said, "One does not become conscious by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." The darkness he spoke of is not out there. It's the emotional underworld within you, where everything unspoken waits. To feel is to descend, and descent always begins with fear. You will feel it when you finally stop distracting yourself. The silence that follows will feel unbearable at first. The tears will come without permission. Your body may tremble, your chest tighten, your breath grow shallow. This is not regression, it's release. It's the psyche unclenching after years of holding itself together. You're not falling apart. You're finally falling in. Most people never reach this point because they believe that feeling will destroy them. But what truly destroys you is not feeling at all. Repression is corrosion. Slow, invisible, relentless. Emotion, when felt, burns clean. To feel is to allow the fire to pass through you instead of living in its smoke. This is why Jung saw emotional breakdowns not as pathology, but as initiation. The psyche's demand for honesty. When the old defenses crumble, the raw material of transformation becomes visible. The heart breaks open, and in that breaking, something greater begins to move through you. You start to notice that emotions, when welcomed, change quickly. Anger turns to clarity. Grief turns to tenderness. Fear turns to presence. The emotion is not the problem. Your resistance to it is. Feeling takes courage because it dismantles identity. It reveals the parts of you that the world never taught you to love. To feel your grief is to meet your depth. To feel your anger is to reclaim your power. To feel your fear is to rediscover your trust. This courage is not dramatic. It is quiet. It happens in small moments. When you stop numbing, when you cry without hiding, when you tell the truth even though your voice shakes. Every time you do, you reclaim a piece of yourself that repression stole. You begin to realize that feeling is not drowning. It is swimming in the ocean of your own being. You were never meant to stand on the shore. Real courage is not the absence of pain. It's the willingness to walk through it with open eyes. When you finally let yourself feel, you discover what all the avoidance was hiding. That inside the very emotions you feared lives the pulse of your aliveness. To feel deeply is to be fully human. And to be fully human is the beginning of liberation. You have spent years pretending to be calm when you were breaking, smiling when you were aching, holding it together when every part of you wanted to collapse. You were taught to survive by numbing yourself, to hide the evidence of your humanity behind strength, control, and silence. But that silence is no longer peace, it is prison. This is your invitation to feel again, to stop performing stability and start practicing honesty, to let yourself be real, even if real means trembling. Carl Jung once said, "Only that which is truly lived can be truly transformed. You cannot heal what you continue to fake. You cannot free what you refuse to feel." The parts of you that you keep pretending don't exist, the rage, the jealousy, the grief, the fear, are not your enemies. They are your unlived life, still waiting for your permission to exist. You do not need to fix your feelings. You need to listen to them. You do not need to understand everything. You need to allow. You do not need to hold yourself together. You need to let yourself fall apart enough to come back whole. Every emotion you've denied is still carrying love, distorted, disguised, desperate to be seen. When you meet it with awareness instead of judgment, it softens. It no longer controls you because it no longer needs to. This is how the cycle ends, not through control, but through contact. Let yourself cry for everything you've buried. Let yourself rage for everything you've lost. Let yourself laugh again even if your voice cracks. Let yourself breathe like it was the first time you've ever allowed air to reach your soul. Because what controls you is not what you feel, it's what you refuse to feel. And the moment you decide to stop pretending, you take back your power. Feeling is not regression, it is resurrection. It's the soul returning home after a long exile. So here, at the end of this journey, pause for a moment. Close your eyes. Ask yourself, what am I pretending not to feel? And when the answer rises, as heat in your chest, as a knot in your throat, as a single tear, don't turn away. Stay. That is your truth trying to reach you. That is your freedom knocking from the inside. If these words touched you, if they reminded you of something buried but still alive, take a breath and subscribe. Not to a channel, but to yourself. To the promise of no longer living half felt, half seen, half alive. Because the moment you allow yourself to feel, you stop being controlled by the lie of composure. And you begin to live, not as an image of who you think you should be, but as the truth of who you already are.